In this very in-depth forecast, the southeast is currently being monitored for severe weather, as widespread severe storms could bring the potential of a couple of tornadoes, scattered damaging wind gusts, and scattered large hail. Everything you need to know here on Gladiator WX. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for November 24th of 2025. For today, we currently have a slight risk for the southeast here, for the lower Mississippi Valley, for eastern Texas into Louisiana, Mississippi, as well as portions of southern Arkansas there. Risks for today include a 5% tornado risk for that slight risk region, a 15% damaging wind gust risk for that slight risk region, as well as a 15% hail risk for the western portions of that slight risk region. For tomorrow, we do have a slight risk for Alabama into Mississippi. Risks for tomorrow include a 5% tornado risk for that slight risk region, a 5% damaging wind gust risk for that marginal risk region, as well as a 5% hail risk for a great portion of that marginal risk and slight risk region as well. Then for day 3 outlook, we currently have no issued areas for severe weather. Then for day 4 to day 8 outlook, we currently have no issued areas. Taking a look at our excessive rainfall forecast for today, we do have a slight risk for southern Arkansas, Louisiana, eastern Texas, and Mississippi. For tomorrow, we do have a marginal risk for Alabama into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. For our day 3 outlook, we currently have a marginal risk for excessive rainfall for Washington into Oregon there. For our winter weather outlook for today, we are expected to see that snowstorm across the northern half of the United States, continue to progress across the northern plains into North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. Probably won't really cover this too much today, probably not at all, because we do have that slight risk that we do have to cover for today, and I do got to get that done quite quickly because I do believe that storms are currently ongoing. Then for tomorrow, we do have a continued risk for extremely heavy snowfall for portions of the Rockies, but also into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Then for day 3 outlook, we're going to continue to see that risk for snowfall just to the south of Lake Erie there, across Erie, Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio. Michigan here, just to the west or east of Michigan, the Great Lake of Michigan, and then also the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So quite a lot of great areas for lake effect snow, but then also elevated portions of the northern Rockies there. Taking a look at our weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. Currently, we have a pretty nice 500 millibar jet here out of the southwest, associated with a trough that's more so back into the central plains, further off to the north. But we do have quite a lot of pretty strong mid-level flow across this region, so this is going to support quite a lot of synoptic forcing across this region. Definitely get those storms going, and also help with our shear with 500 millibar flow. That's going to be getting upwards of 50 to potentially even the mid 50 knots, maybe even approaching the 60 knots in some regions. So quite a lot of synoptic flow coming out of that region. Definitely going to help with those elongated photographs as well, and that risk for hail. Taking a look at our 700 millibars, so we can start off with our low-level jet. We are expected to see a really decent low-level jet across this region. 700 millibar flow out of the southeast or southwest is going to be getting upwards of 40 to even 45 knots in some regions, maybe even approaching 50 knots in some regions, given the fact that HRF is a little bit of a more conservative model. But regardless, we are going to see a really, really nice 700 millibar jet here. We can also look at our 850 millibar jet and how that's going to compare. And again, decent 850 millibar flow here. A little bit more on the weaker side, but that is to be expected. But still sufficient 850 millibar flow. Really nice 700 millibar flow, upwards of 30 to 35 knots, maybe even approaching 40 knots in some regions with our 850 millibar flow. So again, really nice low level jet, definitely going to be sufficient for that risk for tornadoes across this region. Taking a look at our 200 millibars and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms overall, as well as our risk for hail. Starting off with our risk for severe thunderstorms overall, we do have quite a lot of defluence aloft, although we don't have the best 200 millibar flow with flow mostly around that risk for severe thunderstorms, pushing off to the northeast, and then more so easterly flow further off to the south. So we do have quite a lot of defluence aloft when it comes to our 200 millibars. So that's definitely going to be quite supportive of our risk for severe thunderstorms. Definitely enhance that lift quite a bit, and definitely help with updrafts. But we also don't really have the best 200 millibar flow. So you're probably sitting here wondering why we're going to see that much of a risk for large hail across this region, especially for more so western Texas or eastern Texas. Sorry. That's mostly because of our lapse rates. You'll see our lapse rates later on, but we do have some pretty decent lapse rates despite having weaker 200 millibar flow. We do have some stronger 200 millibar flow to the north. We can tell that it doesn't really extend down into that slight risk region. But the primary carrying parameter for our risk for large hail for today is going to not only be our shear at more so our lower levels of the atmosphere and our mid levels, but also our lapse rates. Taking a look at our storm relative felicity or directional shear and how that's going to indicate our risk for tornadoes for today. Again, we are expected to see some really nice directional shear given our very strong low level jet here, really decent low level jet with storm relative felicity values at 0 to 1 kilometer getting upwards of 100, potentially even 200 in some regions right along storms. As well as the more volatile area for tornadoes. We are expected to be looking for a couple of prefrontal cells that might develop, and those are going to have the best chance for tornadoes, as they're going to be a little bit more isolated from the main system and be in a much better environment without the issue of the linear system potentially doing whatever it's doing. So again, really nice storm relative felicity values for any supercell that could potentially develop out ahead of this line, and also the potential for embedded tornadoes in this line given our storm relative felicity values. Again, really nice tornado risk for today. Taking a look at our bulk shear and how that's going to indicate our risk for supercells as well as our risk for hail overall. We are expected to see some really nice bulk shear values across this region at our 0 to 6 kilometer, despite having such a weak 200 millibar jet. With bulk shear values that are going to be getting upwards of 50 to potentially even 60 in some regions. Really widespread, really nice bulk shear values. They're definitely going to be a little bit more stronger as storms are across eastern Texas into portions of Louisiana there, which are going to weaken down into more marginal values of bulk shear, supporting more of a marginal risk for hail as storms move into Louisiana and Mississippi. However, still really nice bulk shear values, and you can see here nice elongations in the mid levels of the hodograph. Don't really have the best elongation in the upper levels of the hodograph, given the fact that we do have a weaker 200 millibar jet. But you can also see really nice curvature in the low levels of those hodographs. So definitely supportive of the risk for tornadoes for today. Really nice speed shear. Again, nice instability. We'll take a look at our convective inhibition and our surface-based gape in a little bit. But again, nice risk for tornadoes for today, as well as that risk for hail. Taking a look at our composite reflectivity and how that's going to indicate our risk for severe thunderstorms or our future simulated radar, we are going to be looking for two different things here when it comes to our risk for severe thunderstorms, as well as our risk for tornadoes. Again, we are going to see that line of severe thunderstorms that is going to progress into eastern Texas. But we also need to really watch out for some of these prefrontal storms that might develop. Those are going to be the best risk for tornadoes across this region, given the fact that they're going to be isolated. They're going to be in a much better environment. They won't really have to interact with other systems in that line. So keep in mind, we do need to watch for those potential prefrontal cells. And then we could also see those cells potentially develop into Louisiana as well. And then we can also see how our other models think about this as well. Our HRW NSSL, again, indicating some prefrontal development not only in eastern Texas, but potentially in Louisiana as well. HRW, RF, ARW, again, prefrontal development. I think a lot of these models are indicating the potential for prefrontal development. Yeah, it does seem like a lot of these models are indicating the potential for prefrontal development. Again, that is going to be the primary area that we do need to cover or watch for risk for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. But definitely do not ignore that line if you're going to be either storm chasing or covering for today, because we could also see embedded tornadoes develop in that line. Those are that's also going to be where our primary risk for large hail and damaging wind gusts might exist. But we are going to see that risk for damaging wind gusts and large hail exist with any of these prefrontal storms. Taking a look at our temperatures and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today, we are expected to see some decent temperatures across this region despite the lack of diurnal heating for a great majority of the risk for severe thunderstorms. Storms might even progress still in the slight risk region into Mississippi by the time the sun begins to rise again. Where they may encounter more diurnal heating, but by then we'll be moving into more of our risk for severe thunderstorms tomorrow. But really, really warm temperatures across a warm sector, regardless, with temperatures potentially getting upwards of the low 70s, maybe even approaching the mid 70s in some regions, with storms progressing into a little bit colder temperatures across Louisiana and into Mississippi. Temperatures in the warm sector, mostly around 70 degrees to the upper 60s. Before encountering diurnal heating as the sun begins to rise, bringing those temperatures back up to those low and mid 70s, potentially even approaching the upper 70s in some regions into Mississippi tomorrow. So decent temperatures across this region. Definitely not the best. We could see better. But given our temperatures that we currently have across this region that we're expected to see, we could definitely get some decent instability out of that. It's definitely not out of the question, but it's definitely going to be a bit more limited. Taking a look at our dew points and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. On top of our decently warm temperatures, we are going to see some really warm dew points. Dew points that are going to be getting upwards of the upper 60s to even the low 70s in some regions. That's going to be the case as storms move into Louisiana. Really, really nice dew points here. Really warm dew points upwards of the upper 60s and the low 70s. They are going to encounter potentially a little bit less dew points as they move into Mississippi, and just a little bit more. With dew points that may drop down into the low upper 60s and the mid 60s, but still really, really warm dew points on top of our warmish temperatures. Definitely going to be quite supportive of some decent instability across this region. Taking a look at our lapse rates and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today, we are expected to see some really, really nice lapse rates across this region. Decent lapse rates, upwards of the upper sixes to even the low sevens in some regions. Really, really nice lapse rates. Definitely going to be quite supportive of our risk for hail. Again, the fact that we don't really have the best upper level flow at our 200 millibars is a little bit concerning when it comes to our hail risk. However, a lapse race will definitely be quite the carrier when it comes to our 15% risk for a large hail. But then also our just sheer coverage of storms and the fact that we are going to see so many storms that could be hail producers, that is also leading to our 15% hail risk. But again, lapse rates, really decent lapse rates, going to be supportive of that risk for hail and also aid with our instability and destabilization of our atmosphere. Lapse rates will tend to weaken as storms move more so into Louisiana and into Mississippi, but still a lot better than no lapse rates at all, or lapse rates down into the fives. We can also take a look at our low-level lapse rates. Previous model runs were indicating a little bit better low-level lapse rates across this region, given the fact that previous model runs were indicating the fact that storms might fire earlier during peak diurnal heating, where we could see a little bit better surface-based lapse rates. However, as storms are going to be mostly progressing overnight, we aren't really going to be seeing any great surface-based lapse rates really whatsoever. So that will be a little bit of a concerning issue when it comes to our instability. However, I don't think it's going to really impact it too much. Taking a look at our most unstable cape and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today, we are expected to see quite a lot of instability across this region, really nice instability across this region, with really nice instability values getting upwards of 1,000, potentially even approaching 2,000 in some regions. With HREF being a little bit more of a conservative model, I wouldn't be surprised if instability values do reach 2,000 in some regions. However, after the sun sets, as it is currently setting across this region or getting about to, we are going to see storms move into Louisiana and further southeastern Texas, where storms are going to be encountering less diurnal heating and using whatever is left over in the warm sector to support themselves overnight, which is going to lead to some weaker instability values. As you can see, they are struggling to get up to 1,000 in some regions, but still upwards of 1,000 across the slight risk region. Even into Mississippi, we could see some instability values potentially reach upwards of 1,000 joules per kilogram of instability. But the primary risk for severe thunderstorms, I think the best risk for severe thunderstorms and the best risk for tornadoes is going to be more so across eastern Texas into portions of Louisiana there. Taking a look at our surface-based cape and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms, we can also look at our surface-based convective inhibition here, how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms. We might have a little bit of convective inhibition across this region, but it doesn't really look like we'll see too much convective inhibition. If anything, there might be a little bit of surface-based convective inhibition further off to the north. However, our surface-based instability doesn't really look too far off from our most unstable cape values. However, as storms do approach more so to Mississippi, we do lose those stronger surface-based cape values, as we might see more convective inhibition come into place, or we could just lose our surface-based instability altogether, making that risk a little bit more elevated. But we do have some surface-based instability, so definitely going to be supportive of the potential for some surface-based storms as storms move more so into Mississippi. But keep in mind that is going to be the back end of our risk for severe thunderstorms. But really nice surface-based cape values. Shouldn't really see too many problems when it comes to convective inhibition. The main problems that we're probably going to encounter are mostly just going to be the fact that a lot of these storms are going to be progressing overnight into Louisiana and Mississippi, where they're not really going to be seeing that diurnal heating, and they're going to have to be supporting themselves over off of whatever is left over in the warm sector. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer instability and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. Across the warm sector, we are expected to see some really nice 0 to 3 kilometer instability values with surface instability that could potentially get upwards of 1,000, or sorry, not 1,000, 100 to 160 joules per kilogram across this region. So really, really nice. Really nice surface instability here. Definitely going to be very supportive of our risk for storms, supportive of our risk for tornadoes. Definitely going to be quite an assistant in any spin of these storms. Again, very supportive of our risk for tornadoes. Definitely going to be quite the aid when it comes to not only surface-based instability in our surface-based storms, but also those tornadoes and our general risks for severe thunderstorms in general. Taking a look at our energy helicity index values and how that's going to indicate our risk for tornadoes across this region. Really nice energy helicity index values indicating quite the overlap of instability and directional shear across eastern Texas into Louisiana. Again, where I think the best risk for tornadoes is probably going to exist. We can pull a sounding from this region really quickly. Again, really nice curvature in the low levels of the hodograph given our really decent low level jet. Elongation in the mid levels of the hodograph, but not really that long of a tail when it comes to our upper levels of our hodograph given our weaker 200 millibar jet. We do have a really nice cape profile with surface-based cape getting upwards of 1,700 joules per kilogram. Not really a whole lot of convective inhibition, as well as effective inflow shear upwards of 260 meters squared a second squared of effective inflow, and then also effective shear when it comes down to our bulk shear. 53 knots there. Really nice profile for not only the potential for large hail, but also the risk for tornadoes across this region. Taking a look at our wind gust models and how that's going to indicate our risk for damaging wind gusts for today. Keep a close eye on this region, or mostly just this entire region where our slight risk region is, but also across eastern Texas, because I think that's probably going to be the most prolific region for severe thunderstorms for today. We can already tell that some storms are producing damaging wind gusts upwards of 30 to potentially even upwards of 40 miles per hour across that region. But again, pretty widespread damaging wind gusts, not only from flow in the warm sector, but also from our storms getting potentially upwards of 20 to 30 miles per hour of wind gusts. And that's going to progress into Louisiana and Mississippi as storms progress eastward as well. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description to check out the socials for GladiatorWX and join the Discord for any updates on GladiatorWX. Hopefully, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.